friends, I'm Rick, and little Missy's over there looking like she wants to jump back over here on the table. I've been having issues with sound for the last week or so, but I'm not going to go into a tirade. This will be my fourth attempt at doing this damn video. And if I can't do it so you can hear what I'm blabbering about, then what's the point of posting a fucking thing in the first place, right? So not believing in Bigfoot. And yet, the newspapers back in the day were just chock full of them. Well, perhaps not just chock full, but there were a lot of reports. So we go back to like 170 years ago in Arkansas. The Arkansas wild man terrified residents in a number of regions of lower Arkansas and Louisiana, and enough so that it kept getting reported in the local papers. In 1851, another report says 2 men reported seeing something man-like chasing cattle. And the 2 men had fired some shots at it. The beast turned and then ran off into the woods. So we go to 1811 to 1812. This is about a year or so after the New Madrid earthquake. And if you're not familiar with that one, you really should look it up because it was a doozy. It was so powerful that it shook places way out on the East Coast, or they felt it way out on the East Coast supposedly. But it altered the course of the Mississippi River. The current course that the Mississippi River follows today was different by several miles in a number of locations before 1811's earthquake. That's how powerful that earthquake can be in the New Madrid Fault. Something to keep in mind if you're living anywhere near the damn thing. Anyway, the year or so after the earthquake saw numerous reports, lots of sightings of these wild men running around in the wilderness, in the woods, or the edge of town, etc., etc. Enough so that a group of prominent Memphis men organized a search party. They went out trying to find this thing. They had no real success, but that always got me, kind of gave me a chuckle because it reminds me of a bunch of rednecks getting drunk, a bunch of redneck Iowa farm boys getting drunk and going out on some kind of hunt. And I've been in one of those or two in my lifetime, and it can be crazy. And you can see a lot of crap you think you did, and maybe not was what you thought. And you got to be careful what you're going around today. You can't just go around randomly shooting crap you don't know what it is, because you know what? You get yourself in a whole buttload of trouble. Just saying, not something I recommend to anybody by any means. Yet there's a whole pack of morons today think that's the only answer. The guns are the answer to every freaking thing in the world. Guess what, Chuck? They ain't. They ain't. And there's a whole lot of folks sitting in prison wishing they had not did the shit they did using their guns. Just saying. Just saying. Common sense goes a long way there, my friend. Not saying you shouldn't have your guns. Not saying they don't serve a purpose. I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. I just don't believe that everybody should go out there with mowing down everybody just because they think they'll be safer. And I will point out that, all these mass shootings occur in large venues that usually have lots of people with their own pistols. What do you hear? All of them hitting the ground and running. You don't see any of them standing up and firing back at them. So all the bravado and bragging and all the other bullshit that comes out of a lot of these people's mouth about, I'm going to do this, is bullshit. And I call it and I see it because I'm an Iowan and we know bullshit when we smell it and when we see it. Anyway. So a whole bunch of these prominent Memphis folks went out on a joyride and didn't turn up anything, but imagine they had a hell of a time. In 1856, other newspaper reports said men with dogs give chase to a wild man, all shaggy and no clothes. The wild man ran into the frozen Brant Lake. When the thin ice broke beneath it, the Bigfoot then disappeared. The men and their dogs prowled up and down the shore, just hoping that the carcass would show up so they could retrieve it. And then out of nowhere, the Bigfoot then rose up out of the shadows and attacked the nearest man, pulled him off his horse, and savaged him violently. And supposedly one of the dogs charged the man, or the Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot, which had reportedly had tusks, picked up the dog and savaged the dog with its tusks and killed it. And then after a number of shots, it ducked and ran off into the woods too, never to be seen or heard from again. Now that said, I have a friend, his name's Kenny, and he is 6'4" and shaggy as all get out. The man has hair down past his shoulders and a beard big enough to make the ZZ Top jealous. So you can damn near not, in the dark, you can't really see his face anyhow because of all the hair. And then if you see him without most of his clothes on, he is one hairy dude. Right? I'm just saying, one hairy dude. So if he was like, wearing brown shorts and ran off in the woods at night, you might think you're seeing a Bigfoot or a wild man. So, I'm just saying. And I would recommend not shooting at my friend Kenny. And it doesn't help that he likes to grunt and grumble and stuff like that, like home improvement fellas like to do, all the time. I'm just saying, you do that out in the dark and everybody's drunk, you could be mistaken for a damn Bigfoot. Just saying. So, the interesting thing about that New Madrid report was the majority of the reports that were being posted of this wild man or these wild men running through the woods, including one report of a wild woman, a big hairy woman looking thing was running out in the woods, somebody's backyard, was that most people didn't consider them to be Sasquatch or Bigfoot. They thought they were literally somebody who had some survivor of the massive earthquake that was so traumatized or was so desperate that became a wild man, literally a literal wild person just trying to survive in the wilderness. So that's always an interesting note when the things that they report don't jive with what we today think they ought to be, right? I mean, it's like UFOs. UFO reports go back to biblical times. I mean, seriously, so does wildman. And we're just talking the western portion of the United States population. I'm talking, us transients who came here and took the land away from the Native Americans. Because if you talk to Native Americans and listen and read some of their stories of the great man, the great wild man, the Sasquatch, and all the different names they call these fella, go back thousands and thousands of years, 10,000 years. These things have been around a long time. So whether North America had its own version of a great ape, the big gorilla thing running around the woods, or some sort of, advanced version of a bear, which is not impossible. It's not impossible that we did have them. My question, of course, is in this modern age, is that fewer and fewer sightings are being seen. Well, we see a lot more UFO sightings and other weird stuff going on in people's door cameras and cell phones. And I think of all the cell phones, door cameras, vehicles that are wired for video, and all the game trail cameras that go out all over the place, and nobody's seeing anything. We see panthers and we see very elusive creatures that we know exist that are, rare or not quite on the endangered species list or ought to be. But the Sasquatch, it would have to have a significant size population to be a viable breeding entity. We know this because we have helped a lot of creatures go extinct in the last couple hundred years. And in part, that's because we just didn't care or we exploited them to no end. I mean, the American bison, for example, literally would be a carpet of moving fur a couple hundred years ago, and within a short few decades, we managed, the great white hunters managed to wipe out 95% of them. It's like the gray wolves. We almost wiped them out of extinction. Now they're becoming, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're such a terrible, terrible problem now that we should be able to go back to hunting them again. Because the ditzy blonde or beach blonde, whatever the hell she is, couldn't get it through her damn head that the whole point of these things was to reintroduce them into the ecosphere. And I'm sorry for the farmers and the ranchers who have to deal with these things, because guess what? That's part of the job. Part of the job. You get to keep them because that's what society decided we're going to have them. When they get to be millions of them roaming around and coming into town and attacking people in broad daylight, then we can talk about going back on the hunt, because that's one thing we're good about is eliminating crap. Just saying. So if we go back to the New Madrid thing, 12 years later, missing wild man encounters and other insane, questionable things keeps popping up. In this case, I actually got a report from the Cambrian Freeman, the paper out of Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, said that similar creatures had been seen the year before near Vicksburg. And of course, we're talking pictures back newspapers back in the day, which were their version of social media and modern communications. So things can be seen here 6 months, a year later, finally shows up in the paper. But the fact that they do, and so many people write these actual reports, and you can go Google a lot of these reports. You can actually see the entries from the newspapers of the era, because there are people who have posted them online. And then there are many public libraries that you can request access to newspapers from your era from back in the day, and through microfiche and through now digital formats, you can read a lot of this stuff from something that was saw 150 years ago and posted in the local Gazette. Just saying, it's pretty interesting stuff. Going back to questions about Bigfoot existing. I truly want to believe Bigfoot exists. I'm one of those believers. I want to be believers. I want to believe him. Now, quote me on this. I don't want to run into one. I sure don't want to see one in my backyard. Because some big hairy thing shows up in my backyard, we're likely to have a problem. That's when the Second Amendment does apply, and I have no issues on that. I'm just pointing that out. Nor would I want to run out and be out camping in the backwater wilderness of some place and run into one of these things either. Because it's no different than a bear. No offense, I don't want to run into a bear. I've seen bears, and I've seen them from a distance, and that's just fine with me. Probably better off for the bear and me that we both keep our distance because we're not cohabitable. Just saying. You put yourself out there and you expect the bear not to eat your face off, that's what you get for thinking the panther ain't going to bite you too. Because that's just the way the real world works, my friends. Anyway, let's hope the sound worked on this video, because if it didn't, I'm done, and I'm not going to make another damn video until I figure out what the hell's going on. Till next time, I'm Rick, Little Missy's over here, and somewhere, someplace out there, somebody has better proof of this big wild man in the woods. Just saying. It just irritates me to no end.